done
Yes,
is more
to own the
important than
shit that
worrying
I've done.
about the articles that are going to come out. Yeah,
No.
I do. I do. I think
What?
it's more
Say that
important
again?
for you to recognize the damage you've done to your family.
The president's son, Hunter Biden.
The investigation into President Biden's son, Hunter Biden.
Hunter Biden has nothing to offer a Chinese businessman. So that immediately raises the question of what are these Chinese officials paying for?
Everybody's looked at it and said there's nothing there. Ask the right question.
There are hundreds of data points that Joe Biden was acting, in a capitalistic term, I would say the chairman.
My son has not made money.
The chairman serves a purpose.
I know why we have held together.
That was Joe Biden's role in the Biden family business.
I thought the article, at least the thing online, was going to be printed to London Times, was good. I think it's clear.
I'm Miranda Devine.
I'm Peter Schweitzer.
My name is Tony Bobulinski, and I'm a former business partner of Hunter Biden, Jim Biden, and indirectly Joe Biden.
You're just gonna just bury all of us, man.
Want to know how corrupt a country is? Take a look at how its leaders live. Do the people in charge always wind up richer than they were before they took office? Do they live in sprawling compounds surrounded by armed guards? Does the average senator, for example, live in the same zip code as the people who vote for him? Places like Scranton, Pennsylvania? If not, you've got corruption. During his 5 decades as a public servant, Joe Biden and his family became rich, and they enriched themselves at the expense of the country they supposedly serve. How did they do that exactly? Well, we obtained thousands of documents, text messages, emails, and recorded calls that tell the story, that illustrate how America's first family really does business. This is Biden, Inc.
I'm Miranda Devine, and I'm a columnist for the New York Post. I wrote a book called Laptop from Hell.
Miranda Devine is an author and a longtime journalist. She spent years covering the Biden family's business practices.
Joe Biden prides himself on being the so-called poorest man in Congress. He's always talking about it.
Don't hold it against me that I don't own a single stock or bond. Don't hold it, I have no savings account.
You know, he talks about riding the train all the time on an Amtrak.
No, I know, I'm Mr. Amtrak. I've traveled over 2 million miles in Amtrak.
And he's just this sort of easygoing guy that doesn't really care about the baubles of wealth.
Everything my sister Valerie and I learned came from Scranton.
Or lunch pail Joe, you know, modest Joe, middle class Joe.
I know I'm called middle class Joe. In Washington, that's not meant as a compliment.
The truth of his lifestyle is the opposite. He actually lives an incredibly privileged life. He has champagne and caviar tastes.
Those high tastes led them to Delaware's Brandywine Valley, where Biden spent most of his life living among hedge-lined mansions.
The Brandywine Valley is just one of the most beautiful parts of America. It's this bucolic scenery, wealthy people that Joe Biden always aspired to be. And so it's a very privileged part of the world, and a lot of very rich people live there in very secluded compounds, just like Joe Biden's.
In 1974, Biden purchased an estate built by the DuPont family. At the time, he made $42,500 a year.
He seemed to have an uncanny knack of getting great deals all the way along the line. I think it had 8 bedrooms, had a large ballroom, and had amazing manicured grounds with tennis courts and swimming pools and a huge garage for cars. And it was a mansion.
He sold that estate for a high price to a donor in 2006.
He sold it for a lot more than he bought it for.
Then he built a new estate on a lake a few miles away.
And again, he got an amazing deal on that. It always seems that Joe Biden's donors are always very happy to sell him blocks of land and pieces of real estate, or buy real estate from him at very generous rates.
It was all possible because of something called the Delaware Way.
It's part of this sort of chummy atmosphere in that very small and very peculiar state of Delaware, where, you know, most American corporations are headquartered because it has such an opaque corporate structure and an ability to hide things that you don't want prying eyes to see.
And I mean it sincerely, what I'm about to say.
Joe Biden, being a senator of 4 decades from Delaware, wielded a lot of power because there were a lot of big corporates that wanted favors from him. The Delaware Way, he sort of described as just a lovely, collegiate, sort of cordial way of getting business done.
exactly did the Biden family do it? Simple question, best answered by the people who helped them do it along the way. Their business partners, like Tony Bobulinski.
My name is Tony Bobulinski, and I'm a former business partner of Hunter Biden, Jim Biden, and indirectly Joe Biden.
Tony Bobulinski made a fortune as a private investor.
He's going against Tony Bobulinski now.
Before his business career, he served as an engineer on a nuclear submarine. He also wrestled at Penn State.
I've done business all over the world, and after I got out of the military, I spent my life investing in businesses.
The Bidens recruited Bobulinski precisely because he was a successful businessman. In December 2015, Bobulinski received a WhatsApp message from a friend saying that he needed help building a Chinese joint venture involving, quote, one of the most prominent families in the United States. The goal was, quote, to build an investment firm like Goldman Sachs.
First of all, who's this friend?
And what type of non-Chinese speaking American even has WhatsApp installed on their phone?
Bobulinski suddenly found himself at the center of one of the Biden family's biggest schemes.
How can the Bidens afford to live the way they do, based on your experience as a former business partner?
I had extensive interaction with Hunter and Jim Biden around the world, and just my interaction and knowledge of that, I'm sure they've been doing similar things, over the prior decades, and maybe that's how they've subsidized Joe's living and stuff like that.
The project began in 2015. At the time, Joe Biden was the Vice President of the United States.
Put yourself in the position of the Chinese, if you're in Chinese intelligence or the Chinese Communist Party, and you wanted to infiltrate the United States government. Who are you going to reach out to? Were you going to reach out to one of Obama's daughters? I don't think so. You could do your own research, and I'm sure they did it, and Hunter was low-hanging fruit, and they targeted him from multiple directions, and that all culminated in the fourth quarter of 2015, while Joe was still the sitting vice president of the United States.
The first partner to approach Bobulinski was a British national called James Gillier.
James Gillier, a successful businessman in his own right. I developed a very, very close and trusting relationship with him. He basically communicated in shorthand. You notice he won't use the word Hunter, he'll use the word H. He won't call, I think he calls Joe in a couple of text messages, but he won't call it the Biden family, he'll call it the B's and stuff like that.
The three other partners came from Joe Biden's inner circle. Rob Walker, a longtime political operative close to the Biden family, Joe Biden's brother Jim, and Joe Biden's son, Hunter.
But the dominant thing that they were bringing to the table, and Hunter says it crystal clear in his own words, was the Biden family and the history of Joe's political career.
Bobulinski and his partners formed a company called Oneida Holdings. They communicated mostly over text, WhatsApp, and email.
Oneida Holdings was a Delaware LLC that I set up and our lawyer set up, and that was to formalize the agreement that we had between the partners.
Through Oneida, Bobulinski and his partners would own 50% of a company called Sino-Hawk Holdings, which Bobulinski also created. The other 50% would be owned by a Chinese official, Chairman Yi.
At that point, he was a Forbes 40 under 40. People believed he was worth tens of billions of dollars, getting awards all over the world.
Yi was a Chinese billionaire who ran CEFC. That would be the capitalist side of China's One Belt, One Road global infrastructure investment project. Chairman Yi's top aide, called Director Zhang, is a CCP official with close ties to Chinese President Xi Jinping.
There's zero chance that CFC, one of, I think, the 5 largest private companies in China at the time, would have had any interest in doing business with Jim Biden or Hunter Biden unless Joe was the sitting vice president of the United States.
Sino-Hawk was their big break. Unlike other business ventures like Burisma, the Bidens had an ownership stake in this project, and they expected to get enormously rich.
CFC was talking about deploying billions of dollars, and Hunter and Jim Biden and the Biden family expected to make hundreds of millions of dollars from this, if not billions of dollars.
Let's not forget that you too, Mr. Tony Bobulinski, you too, would be making millions off this deal. Right, partner? Oops, I mean CEO.
Bobulinski's first encounter with Hunter Biden came in Los Angeles in June of 2017.
The first time I actually sat down with Hunter was here on the patio of the Chateau Marmont in Los Angeles, and we spent about 2 hours basically just catching up on the business, talking about how he interacted with his father and what his family thought about this.
Hunter made it very clear that his father, Joe Biden, was playing a role.
He was very laid back in that meeting, very likable, very engaging, but he sort of was surprised, I guess, at my questions because he just sort of responded with, yeah, my dad's lawyers and his advisors around me don't like the stuff that I'm doing, but I just go directly to my father. If I got questions, he'll take my call anytime and make himself available for what I need and the things that I'm doing.
Hunter Biden proved his point a few days later when his father came to LA to give a speech.
I'm middle-class Joe.
Here I'm exchanging messages with Hunter. May 2nd, 2017, I'm coordinating with Hunter on the meeting with Joe. Hunter sends me a message. Dad not in until 11. Let's meet and Jim meet at 10 at the Beverly Hilton where he's staying. Okay, 10 tonight. We'll see you at the Beverly Hilton. Let me know if anything changes. Then later that night, I let him know I'm on my way. I'm here. Are you guys in the bar?
The meeting lasted 45 minutes.
So I literally haven't been back here since I actually met with the Bidens, and Joe walked across through the lobby with his security detail. Hunter, Jim, and I were already sitting here sort of positioned behind this column. They've redone some of the bar.
After the meeting at the Hilton, Bob Alinsky and Jim Biden crossed the street to meet at the Peninsula Hotel.
I basically spent 2 hours with Jim, and I was very concerned about how they were doing this. And after I walked through my concerns, I just distinctly remember, Jim looking at me and getting a smirk on his face and, like a slight chuckle and just saying, plausible deniability. Those two words clearly define how the Bidens operate, how they do business.
A few weeks later, on May 13th, 2017, ILER sent an email explaining each partner's share of the new company. Quote, the equity will be distributed as follows: 20 for H, meaning Hunter, 20 for RW, meaning Rob Walker, 20 for JG, meaning James ILER, 20 for TB, Bob Alinsky, 10 for JB, Jim Biden, and 10 held by H for the big guy.
Who could the big guy be? If it isn't Joe Biden, I would love to debate that with anybody.
Another email sent the same day was called Expectations. In it, ILER laid out salaries for all the partners. Hunter and Bob Alinsky were both set to make $850,000. 3 days later, an infuriated Hunter wrote this: I will need a hell of a lot more than $850 per year on a month basis. And this is my own personal problem, but I'll make it yours also, I'm sure. Ha. Bob Alinsky responded, H, we have to pay a team of people who'll be working 100 hours a week. To which Hunter responded, Tony, they are both coming to be my partner, to be partners with the Bidens. He has implied that the number one has made that clear and available to him. According to Bob Alinsky, number one is a clear reference to Chinese President Xi Jinping. Hunter continues, come on, man, we both want the same thing. Just happens that in this instance, only one player holds the trump card, and that's me. May not be fair, but that's the reality because I'm the only one putting my entire family legacy on the line. In a private side conversation, James ILER tells Bob Alinsky, Tony, I ain't that stupid. Know why Yi wants the deal and what makes it enormous. It's the family name in reality. They could have asked for 51%. Bob Alinsky, acting as the CEO, decided he should get 3 votes on the company board so the Bidens couldn't overrule the other business partners. That infuriated Hunter Biden, who lashed out over text. Hey, Tony, I have an idea. In light of the fact that we are at an impasse of sorts, and both James's lawyers and my chairman gave an emphatic no.
When he said my chairman in that text, he was referring to his father.
As the process went on, the business partners became more paranoid. ILER sent Bob Alinsky another WhatsApp message. Quote, don't mention Joe being involved. It is only when you are face to face. I know you know that, but they are paranoid. Bob Alinsky replies, okay, they should be paranoid about things.
Joe was used as sort of the brass ring, once again, the Biden franchise, the implied understanding that, he was aware of what Hunter and Jim were doing.
Ultimately, Sinohawk failed. The Chinese never delivered the operating capital. Amid a Chinese corruption probe, Director Yi disappeared. He's never been seen again. CEFC was dismantled, and yet somehow the Biden family still made millions.
I later learned that Hunter Biden and Jim Biden had defrauded me, and they had actually altered documents. They had actually taken a copy of Sinohawk Holdings documents, used the exact same document, removed Oneida Holdings from that document, and put Owasco, Hunter Biden's law firm in place to be the 50% owner of Sinohawk.
The Bidens allegedly cheated their business partners and took the money themselves. So far, the justice system has ignored Tony Bobulinski's claims and evidence.
My understanding, looking at bank account records and what's been made public, is Hunter Biden received over $5 million across a period of time.
Let's keep the same energy. Since we hate the Bidens for this, we need to hate Tony too.
Tony only came forward after the fact. He found out that the Bidens cut him out of the deal.
No responsible investor would ever hand money to Jim or Hunter Biden. Their only value, and their personal texts make it clear, came from their connection to Joe Biden. On the basis of that connection, they made dozens of deals all over the world, mostly in foreign countries famous for corruption, places like Kazakhstan and Ukraine and Romania. But as the Sinohawk scandal illustrates, no place delivered greater dividends than Communist China.
I've been writing books on this subject for more than 10 years, and I've seen a lot. I've focused on Democrats and Republicans, presidents, members of Congress. The Hunter Biden one is the worst.
There's no journalist in America who spent more time exposing corrupt politicians than Peter Schweitzer.
I'm Peter Schweitzer. I focus on exposing cronyism and corruption at the highest levels of power in Washington, D.C.
The highly anticipated book by conservative author Peter Schweitzer.
His new book, Clinton Cash.
Major donations from foreign countries to the Clinton Foundation.
We first ran across Hunter Biden's business practices in 2015 when we stumbled across an account on a Chinese blog. There were pictures of Hunter Biden meeting with the equivalent of the heads of China's Goldman Sachs, Citigroup, JP Morgan, head of the Federal Reserve, and the Treasury Secretary. And we were immediately sort of stunned by this, wondering, Hunter Biden, who we vaguely heard was a lobbyist before his father became vice president, why was he meeting with these Chinese officials?
I'm the vice president of the United States.
And what we realized is that Hunter Biden was starting to secure deals really within months of the point that Barack Obama, then president of the United States, literally appointed Joe Biden as the point person on U.S. policy towards China.
Had great meetings with a good friend, President Xi.
That's when you realize that something is up, because as in comedy with corruption, timing is everything.
If I only got to hear you sing, it would have been worth the trip.
China is a rival power that is trying to supplant us in the international scheme of things. So the scale of money that we're talking about with China, I think, puts it in a category by itself.
Schweitzer and his team had a breakthrough when they got access to a copy of Hunter Biden's laptop.
We took the laptop and we actually compared it to publicly known sources of information. The Secret Service had released Hunter Biden's Secret Service travel records at the request of the U.S. Senate. So we took the laptop, mentions of trips and travel, compared it to the Secret Service travel logs. They lined up completely 100%. It was impossible that the laptop was fake. We identified 4 businessmen in the laptop. All 4 of those businessmen have links to the highest levels of Chinese intelligence.
就是我们在美国的权势核心圈啊，我们有我们的老朋友。
These are not guys in China that run potato chip factories.
其实呢，就过去这个30年啊，过去40年，我们在美国的他的这个利用他权势核心圈，是不是？
The Bidens got some $31 million from Chinese businessmen with links to the highest levels of Chinese intelligence. That's not even in dispute.
但现在呢，现在我们看到拜登上台了，传统的精英、政治精英啊，这个建制派，他们跟华尔街的关系是非常密切的。所以大家看到吧
Hunter Biden has nothing to offer a Chinese businessman. He provided no service in return whatsoever. So that immediately raises the question of, what are these Chinese officials paying for? And that's when you go on red alert.
拜登的儿子被特朗普说你在全球有什么基金公司，发现没有？谁帮他建的基金公司啊？明白吗？这里边都有买卖啊。那么
Imagine for a second, during the height of the Cold War, Ronald Reagan's family or Jimmy Carter's family is receiving tens of millions of dollars from Russian businessmen with links to the KGB. I mean, there'd be alarm bells going off in Washington, D.C., and rightfully so.
I've never spoken to my son about Russian.
he's not providing any remotely measurable service in return for what amounts to tens of millions of dollars that these Chinese executives have given the Biden family. It's remarkable the lying that has taken place with the Biden family. The fact that they're shoveling tens of millions of dollars into the Biden family, they are getting something in return. Mark my word. The challenge is figuring out exactly what it is.
The central question is straightforward. What exactly was Joe Biden's role in his son's business practices? Here's what we know. First, Hunter and his father shared bank accounts.
We know that Hunter Biden and Joe Biden had commingled finances. They had shared bank accounts. They had at least one shared debit card. We also know that Hunter Biden was paying for some of Joe Biden's bills to do with the expensive upkeep on one of his Delaware mansions.
How much was Hunter Biden paying for? Well, in 2019, he sent a text message to his daughter, Naomi, and he said this, quote, "I hope you all can do what I did and pay for everything for this entire family for 30 years. It's really hard. But don't worry, unlike Pop, I won't make you give me half your salary." Second, emails and text messages between Hunter and his Sinohawk business partners reveal direct involvement by Joe Biden in the business, both as Hunter's, quote, chairman and as the big guy.
We know that the big guy is Joe Biden because he's referred to in that way several times on the laptop, but also in various WhatsApp messages, encrypted messages, and other messages on Tony Bobulinski's various phones.
Third, there is the timing of Hunter Biden's pay cut at Burisma.
Hunter Biden was getting an enormous amount of money from this corrupt Ukrainian energy company for sitting on their board and not doing much, and throughout the period that his father was vice president. But within weeks of Joe Biden no longer being vice president, Hunter's salary got cut in half.
Fourth, Joe Biden met with his son's business partners on multiple occasions.
There is overwhelming evidence that Joe Biden met with at least 14 of Hunter Biden's business partners. He met with Chinese business partner in Beijing when he took Hunter with him on Air Force 2. He met other business partners, Russians, Ukrainians, Kazakhstanis, Mexicans. Anytime Hunter had a business deal to do, Joe was there, and he was quite happy to glad hand.
Joe Biden has denied that those meetings ever took place, but we know they did because of the laptop and Joe's official public schedule. Still, no one in the White House press corps has ever pressed Joe Biden on his lie.
All right, new controversy swirling around the Biden family after Elon Musk released internal Twitter files on the company's suppression of the Hunter Biden laptop story. Tucker Carlson digging deep into this and the family's finances in a brand new Tucker Carlson Originals, Biden Inc. Part 1 is streaming now on Fox Nation. Here's a little preview.
Schweitzer and his team had a breakthrough when they got access to a copy of Hunter Biden's laptop.
We took the laptop and we actually compared it to publicly known sources of information. The Secret Service had released Hunter Biden's Secret Service travel records at the request of the U.S. Senate. So we took the laptop, mentions of trips and travel, compared it to the Secret Service travel logs. They lined up completely 100%. It was impossible that the laptop was fake. We identified 4 businessmen in the laptop. All 4 of those businessmen have links to the highest levels of Chinese intelligence.
So there's a preview for you, and Tucker joins us now on the 5. It's good to have you. There's lots of questions here, so I'm going to kick it around the table. We'll start with Greg for a question for Tucker.
All right, I was going to ask you what's on your originals that's not on Fox, but I'm more interested in the fact that you've lived in D.C. for a long time. You had lived there. You ran into Hunter. What you must have had some not relationship, but some kind of interactions with him. How would you characterize him in your capacity?
Well, I knew him really well, and I always liked him. I mean, he's my neighbor and friend, and had dinner with him a bunch. I mean, I knew him. We talked a lot about drinking. I don't drink. He was struggling with that. But in the background, I knew people who worked with him in his business, that he was effectively selling access to his dad.
Yeah.
And I'll just be totally honest about it. I never really thought about it because I lived in D.C. for 35 years where people sell access to government officials. They're called lobbyists. And that's kind of the business of the city. And I never really thought, wow, that's kind of a crime, though I knew, and I didn't know the extent of it, of course, but I remember someone who had worked with him saying to me, wow, he's getting really, really close to, you know, what you should not be doing because it's criminal. And it turns out, based on what we know now from the laptop, that it was absolutely criminal. And the reason we made this documentary was not to inform you that he was doing something wrong. Everyone knows that. It was to take a long-form piece and explain it and show on the screen exactly how we know this. It's not a partisan attack. It's not attacking the president's son. This guy shared a bank account with his dad while his dad was the vice president. His dad was bringing him on trips, including to China. He was doing business with the people he met on those government trips and kicking back the money to his dad. That's not an allegation. That is shown on the laptop, which is why they suppressed it.
Mm-hmm.
Judge, do you have a question for Tucker?
Well, I know him really well. And I always liked him. I mean, he's my neighbor and friend. And I always liked him.
Up in Colorado Springs, somebody came in and legit shot it up. I got hit 7 times in the back with an AR-15. They won't let me take any pictures yet because of evidence to post, but I can make this little video. And
Who's they? And why won't they let you post a picture? Because of evidence, but they are cool with you posting a video.
my back is
Power from weapons is studied inside a ballistics lab at Wayne State University, where researchers simulate a bullet's impact on the human body.
It's a block of 20% gelatin, and it's meant to represent the human tissues, so soft tissues.
Watch as Cynthia Burr's team fires a handgun round at 1,000 feet per second into the gelatin block.
For this particular round, you'll see the bullet come in on this side. You see this temporary cavity here happening. So that expansion is what happens in the body, and then it collapses down. So that's where your damage comes in.
Now watch as a team fires a round from an assault rifle.
We see a lot more disruption. This round actually breaks apart. It doesn't exit, so it's about 3,000 feet per second, and all of that energy goes into the soft tissue. We have a piece of plastic here to reflect to do the videos, and it actually lifted the plastic up off the table with the energy.
An aftermath photo of the handgun round shows a relatively straight line through the tissue, exiting the other side. But not so with the round from an AR-15.
It basically goes into the body and creates an explosion inside the body.
Trauma surgeons say the wound from an assault rifle can be catastrophic.
And the worst part is in a child, all the vital organs are that much closer together. So each of those bullets causes, irreversible damage.
As you can see, Barrett is still in his hospital bed. He was hit 7 times and is now recovering. Barrett, thank you for being with us. How are you doing? How are you feeling?
I am doing as good as I can. I am in a lot of pain, but I'm a fighter. I'm actually able to walk. I got hit 7 times in the back with bullets. I got clipped a few more times after that, actually, but 7 bullets went into me. I am so thankful. I am very thankful. All 7 bullets missed my organs, my spine, my kidney, my colon. They cut me in 5 places in my stomach and put cameras in me and went all through. Saturday night, I thought I was dead. My last phone call was to my father, and
what was that?
I thought I was dead Saturday night. That was horrible. Yeah, I wanted him to. I told him I was probably going to die, that I've been shot, and Sunday, Monday, I'm walking. I don't know, I'm truly blessed to be here. I've got so much hate. I've got so much love in my heart over this situation and how we could have helped stop this with gun laws in the future. And I don't know how many more times this has to happen until we get the bill across or the law or whatever. And it's absolutely horrible.
So he got shot 7 times with an AR in the stomach, ran half a mile to a 7-Eleven, where the clerk was able to stop all 7 gunshot wounds from bleeding out, and had surgery where they cut open his chest, and he is fully recovered and walking and talking about gun laws and legislation on the same night.
The same fucking night?
They really think we are stupid to believe this shit.
I'm not stupid. How about you?
No offense to the idiots, you idiot.
Biden family amassed a fortune.
I have not taken a penny from any foreign sources. You have to fight the cancer of corruption.
Director Ray, please place your left hand on the Bible. Please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, Christopher A. Ray,
I, Christopher A. Ray,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support and defend
that I will support and defend
the Constitution of the United States,
the Constitution of the United States.
The system does produce corruption, and I think implicit in the system is corruption.
No one fucks with my
Yeah, goddamn right. Who has physical possession of the laptop?
The FBI.
How long have they had it?
Since December of 2019, and they've buried it.
You have to fight the cancer of corruption.
FBI agents deliberately obstructing any attempts by any other agents to try and investigate.
I have not taken a penny from any foreign source ever in my life.
The story itself was being suppressed by what I believed were bad actors.
You know who I am. You know who he is. You know his character. You know my character. You know our reputations for honor and telling the truth.
How do you know a system is rigged? When the midwits in charge wind up phenomenally rich, as in this country they inevitably do. But in fact, the corruption runs much deeper than that. The institutional centers of American life, the media, the tech companies, federal law enforcement, are now fully committed to protecting the people in charge at all costs. They are rotten to the core, and the way they dealt with the Hunter Biden laptop story proves it. The Biden family amassed a fortune, not through skill or experience, but by selling access to corrupt oligarchs in foreign countries. They defrauded their business partners. They spent huge amounts of money on drugs and hookers.
I went one time for 13 days without sleeping and smoking crack and drinking vodka.
Joe Biden was aware of this. That's a fact. It's demonstrably true, based on evidence provided from Hunter Biden's laptop and from his business partners. That means that federal law enforcement has a trove of actionable evidence against the Biden family. So what have they done with it? Nothing. They've protected the Bidens. What you're about to see is the definitive account of how the FBI, the intelligence agencies, and the American news media coordinated to rig a presidential election and change the course of history.
Who has physical possession of the laptop?
The FBI.
How long have they had it?
Since December of 2019, and they've buried it.
Buried it is an understatement. Since Joe Biden's days as Barack Obama's faithful vice president, federal law enforcement has actively suppressed any news of the Biden family's crimes. They've ignored mounting evidence. They killed the story. They protected the Biden family.
I went to the second debate in Nashville between President Trump and Joe Biden.
There have been questions about the work your son has done in China.
Nothing was unethical. Here's what the deal.
The next morning, I flew to D.C.
I think every law enforcement agent in the FBI, with the responsibilities they're entrusted with, has significant power.
I spent 5+ hours sitting in a room with, at one point, I think as much as 6 federal agents, walking through all the facts of my knowledge of the Biden family.
Our folks need to make sure that they're not just doing the right thing, that they're doing it in the right way.
I wish I had pictures of the faces of the 2 main agents that were interviewing me, because I would say something and you could just see the shock in their face.
They avoid even the appearance of bias or lack of objectivity.
When I was in my interview with the FBI on October 23rd for that 5+ hours, on my BlackBerry, Jim Biden called me via WhatsApp. So I looked down and I'm like, is he really calling me right now? I showed it to the agents. The agents got up out of their chair and left the room. So at the end of that 5+ hour interview, the head of station told my lawyers, listen, an individual named Tim Tebow is gonna run point on all of this. We're definitely gonna have Tony come back in for a follow-up interview. Could be as early as next week.
There was just one major problem.
Stunning new developments surrounding the Hunter Biden laptop investigation.
Highly credible whistleblowers have come forward alleging that the agencies have downplayed negative information on Hunter Biden.
How did this Timothy Tebow guy conceal this information from Tony Bobolinsky for basically 2 years now?
Despite mounting reams of evidence, Thibault never got in touch with Tony Bobulinski.
I haven't heard from him since.
At all?
No. Nor have my lawyers.
No communication whatsoever?
No.
Thibault resigned in August of 2022 after whistleblowers produced evidence of his left-wing political bias. Would you speak to the FBI again?
I'd be happy to.
At any time?
At any time.
After 2 nationally televised interviews, after giving his evidence to the feds, after waiting more than 2 years for an indictment, Tony Bobulinski still hasn't even received his promised phone call. It's not that the FBI was inactive. They were doing something. They were actively suppressing the investigation and aggressively working to kill the story.
In late August of 2020, Rudy Giuliani received an email from a whistleblower, the laptop repair shop owner, who had in his possession Hunter Biden's abandoned laptop.
You have 2 smoking guns on set with you right now. We're going to get to that in a moment.
Yep. Rudy and his lawyer started to go through the material and realized that this was bombshell, very damning about Joe Biden.
The amount of crimes that Democrats committed in Ukraine are astounding.
Unbeknownst to him, he was being spied on by the FBI through a covert surveillance warrant.
At the very same moment the FBI was actively protecting Hunter Biden, the FBI was spying on the Trump campaign.
I got a call late at night or a text message late at night with some photographs from the laptop.
The New York Post has published damning emails found on an old computer once owned by Biden's troubled son, Hunter.
I knew Rudy Giuliani. They had tried a lot of ways to get the story out there. I was really the last port of call. I liked what I saw. I realized that it was a good story, and my editors, to their very great credit, decided to go ahead with it.
A major American newspaper.
A tabloid newspaper.
A tabloid newspaper story with emails purportedly swiped from the vice president's son, Hunter.
We did all the due diligence and put the story out. But my text messages with Rudy Giuliani also were accessible by the FBI.
The text messages the FBI intercepted on Rudy Giuliani's phone tipped them off that he was communicating with a New York Post reporter. What happened next is stunning.
The Hunter Biden laptop story, the New York Post.
Yeah, we have that too.
Yeah, so you guys censored that as well?
So we took a different path than Twitter. Basically the background here is the FBI, I think, basically came to us, some folks on our team. It was like, hey, just so you know, like, you should be on high alert. We thought that there was a lot of Russian propaganda in the 2016 election. We have it on notice that basically there's about to be some kind of dump.
And so within hours of our story going live on October 17, 2020, Facebook and Twitter shut us down.
Suppressing the evidence and censoring the story wasn't enough for the feds. They needed to give Joe Biden cover. They needed to frame the coverage of the story to the extent there was any. They needed to create a narrative, and with help from the throne sniffers in the American media, that's exactly what they did.
Serious questions tonight.
There are growing questions
about whether the Russians are using Rudy Giuliani,
the man once known as America's mayor, Rudy Giuliani, and if he is being used by Russia
to interfere in the U.S. presidential election,
to influence the 2020 presidential campaign.
It took operatives at the highest level of the U.S. intel community, men like James Clapper, Michael Hayden, Leon Panetta, John Brennan, less than a week to release a letter falsely declaring the story was Russian disinformation.
It's a famous letter by 51 former intelligence officials.
Experts say it has all the hallmarks of information laundering.
4 former heads of the CIA, John Brennan, Leon Panetta, James Clapper, and so on.
Every, 3-letter agency the United States has was represented.
Who do you think is behind this?
Well, the Russians would be my number one guess.
They wrote this scurrilous and dishonest letter saying that the laptop, and therefore our reporting, had all the hallmarks of Russian disinformation.
Not a single one of those 51 intel officials reached out to me.
CBS News has learned the FBI is now looking into whether the information found on the device may be part of a Russian disinformation campaign.
Tarring my name, my family's name, all the decades of military service that we served this country, I was irate. They knew they were lying.
Their craven lying gave Joe Biden just the cover he needed.
There are 50 former national intelligence folks who said that what he's accusing me of is a Russian plan.
They didn't reach out to me because they had an agenda.
5 former heads of the CIA, both parties, say what he's saying is a bunch of garbage.
Their clear-cut agenda was to basically create noise so the media could use that letter and create cover for the Biden campaign and help Joe Biden get elected.
You mean the laptop is now another Russia hoax?
And that's exactly what.
Is this
that's
where you're
exactly
going?
what.
This is
told.
where he's going. The laptop is Russia,
Gentlemen,
Russia.
I want to stay on the issue of race.
You
okay?
have to be kidding. Here we
Mr.
go
President,
again with Russia.
We're going to continue on the issue of race.
The letter was an utter lie, but it worked. Sounds like the election was, I'll just say it, rigged in part by the FBI.
It was. It was.
But corrupt federal bureaucrats didn't do it alone. They had the media to help them. The vast majority of reporters have always been liberal. That's been true for decades. But something changed dramatically during Donald Trump's first term. They became activists. That wasn't always true. As recently as 2016, there were many reporters at major outlets willing to cover scandals that implicated certain Democrats. But by 2020, that was over. We're not speculating about this. Journalists say so themselves. This is how the news media protected the Biden family.
So in 2015, I released a book called Clinton Cash, looking at the flow of money during Hillary Clinton's tenure as Secretary of State.
A new book called Clinton Cash.
And this book is by no means going away. We went to the investigative unit of the New York Times. We went to the investigative unit of the Washington Post and said, we found some really interesting things. And in both instances, they said, great. The New York Times ran a 4,000-word front-page piece confirming all of our findings, and the Washington Post ran a series of articles, including a front-page story.
We're back into the political season, and therefore we will be subjected to all kinds of distractions.
If you flash forward to 2020, the response was completely and totally different. They simply had no curiosity and did not want to pursue this story.
Mr. Biden, what flavor did you get? We got one vanilla, one chocolate.
The mainstream media realized that if the Hunter Biden story was picked up by the mainstream media as the Clinton Cash story had in 2015, it was probably going to influence the campaign in a way that they did not want it to be influenced. So they decided basically to look the other way and pretend that the Hunter Biden story was not there.
Mr. President, can I ask you a quick question on Israel before you drive away?
No, you can't. Not unless you get in front of the car as I step on it.
I mean, and essentially they admit this. Ben Smith, who's a media reporter for the New York Times, in October of 2020, right on the eve of the election, ran a front page story. The title is, Trump had one last story to sell, the Wall Street Journal wouldn't buy it. Subtitle, The Gatekeepers Return. But it's also about a larger shift in the American media, one in which the gatekeepers have appeared to return after a long absence. Mr. Schweitzer is still around this cycle in 2020, but you won't find his work in mainstream outlets. He's over on Breitbart with a couple of Hunter Biden stories this month.
The gatekeepers were back, and the Hunter Biden laptop story was stopped at the gates.
It didn't surprise me because I knew it was happening, and it was frustrating. They simply decided we don't want the American people to know about it. It's engaging in a kind of disinformation that you expect from Pravda during the Cold War. You'd expect from news outlets in communist China, pretending a problem isn't there when it's really there. It's reminiscent of those old images from the Stalin era of the Soviet Union where there'd be a picture of Joe Stalin with somebody, the person would fall out of favor, and they would airbrush the person out. They literally airbrushed the Hunter Biden story out of the image that people had of the 2020 election.
Polls taken after the 2020 election showed that 80% of voters, including a majority of Democrats, believe the outcome of the election would have been different if coverage of Hunter Biden's laptop had been, quote, truthful, if it hadn't been censored. A full 17 months after the election, the gatekeepers opened the door. The New York Times itself finally admitted that Hunter Biden's emails were real. It wasn't disinformation, it was authentic. But it was too late. Biden had already won. They got what they wanted. The story was dead. The New York Post's coverage of it was censored. The media ignored the reports. The intel agencies created cover. The FBI got social media to throttle the story and kill the investigation. But even that wasn't enough. The people who made the story possible needed to be severely punished.
Federal investigators served a search warrant today at former Trump attorney Rudy Giuliani's New York City apartment.
Just 4 months into the Joe Biden presidency, the Justice Department raided the home of Rudy Giuliani.
This is a decision that obviously would have had to get approval by the highest levels of the Justice Department.
Nearly every one of the high-profile players involved in investigating Hunter Biden's business practices have since been arrested, indicted, or raided by federal law enforcement. Rudy Giuliani, who received the original copy of Hunter Biden's hard drive, had his home searched and personal electronic devices seized by the FBI. Steve Bannon, a former advisor to Donald Trump who first tried to place the Hunter Biden laptop story, was arrested and charged with fraud. The FBI executed a search warrant at the home of Victoria Tenzing, who'd worked with Ukrainians to uncover more information about Hunter Biden's business practices. Lev Parnas and Igor Fruman, who helped Rudy Giuliani investigate Hunter Biden's business dealings, were both arrested on campaign finance charges in October 2019. And then the man who first received the laptop, John Paul McIsaac, who runs the computer repair shop in Delaware, says the FBI agents who confiscated Hunter Biden's physical laptop threatened him when they showed up at his store. The crackdown had a chilling effect on the people who wanted to tell the story.
My name is Jack Maxey. I'm here in Switzerland doing a forensic audit of Hunter Biden's laptop, or at least the version that I have.
Jack Maxey is a longtime Republican consultant. He says he received a copy of the laptop directly from Rudy Giuliani. He's been a source to many media outlets, including the Washington Post. Out of concern for his physical safety, Maxey fled to Switzerland.
I came to Switzerland because I'm still under the impression that the Swiss people value classic liberal ideas of democracy and freedom of speech.
Maxey eventually decamped to a small town near the Swiss-German border, where with the help of a forensic programmer, he studied the contents of the laptop. The goal was to post them on a server outside the United States.
This is not a game, America. The bad actors who are involved are some of the most dangerous people in the world, and I would include our intelligence services in that bundle. You would think that our intel services would be a little bit more interested in what Hunter was up to rather than what I'm up to, and I think that's signal from noise that they're concerned about me, not the security of the United States of America. And I believe that's because these intelligence agencies now exist for themselves. They exist to cover up their own bad actions.
Do you have evidence of criminal behavior by Hunter Biden?
Yes, there's multitudes of evidence of criminal behavior by Hunter. I don't necessarily have faith that law enforcement will take action. I think, like most of the American people, they're frightened of the alphabet agencies. They're frightened of the Treasury, the Department of Justice, the whole package. And I think it's important to the American people to understand, if you are afraid of your government, you are already living in a totalitarian state, whether you call it a republic or not.
What kind of price do you think you're going to pay for doing this?
Well, I am making huge sacrifices, but America is worth it. I'm constantly reminded that there are plenty of better men than me taking dirt naps, some of them who've never even had a chance at life. I'm 56 years old, and I'm willing to sacrifice everything for my country.
You're willing to go to prison for this?
I'm willing to go to prison or anywhere else. Gates of hell if necessary.